The new year typically kicks off with excitement, renewed hope, a resolve to be better, promise to work out more, indulge less, eat healthy, drink more water, and the list goes on. We make promises to everyone, to our partners, to our employees, to our mothers, our sisters, that we're going to be better this year. To be honest, this year was no different. I too made my own resolutions. I promised to be a better version of myself. And there's something about that first whiff of January 1st air that just makes you feel like the possibilities are endless, right? You can square away all the things you didn't get right in 2023. This is 2024, right? And I am solidly behind We No Go Gree for Anybody 2024. However, as the dust of the holiday season settles and the stark realities of the new year starts to set in, I ask myself, pray tell, what does 2024 have in store for us? It's funny, I have a friend that said to me, Dirty December, Jackba January. Well, that's for those that have the opportunity to Jackba. For those of us that are squarely in Nigeria, 2 feet in, unapologetically, solidly focused on this market, here's what we know for sure. The USD is now officially 913 Naira. But let me tell you, on the streets, it can go anywhere to up to 1,300 Naira. Inflation still sits very squarely around 29%. And the projection for GDP growth is quite meager, meaning that it will not be enough to offset the pressures of poverty and unemployment that has been caused by the removal of the subsidy and the devaluation of the Naira. But here's the thing, none of this is new to us. Yes, it is a new year, but it's the same problems. But why is that good news? Why am I smiling? Well, because 2023 prepared us for 2024. There's the saying that goes, luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. Last year caught us by surprise, but 2024, we have the benefit of the experience. We survived 2023, and we survived it with lessons. So here, this year, with our belts tightened and our wallets fastened, welcome to another episode of Tech into the Future, where we discuss the outlooks for 2024 as it regards technology. We explore the opportunities that lie in 2024, and together we create the luck for which we will not only survive, but thrive in 2024. Hello, and welcome to Tech into the Future, where we talk about everything that's happening in technology and how it affects you. My name is Ngozi Maduka-Dozie, and I look after Android partnerships for West Africa at Google.
And I'm Tomiwa Larikomo, CEO of Big Cabal Media, publisher of Tech Cabal, a publication that's been covering African technology for the last decade. Alongside Ngozi, we'll be guiding you into the world of tech in Nigeria, Africa, and the world. Welcome to 2024. It's an exciting new year after the roller coaster that was 2023. As we go into the year, this episode is where we will speak with some of the people who will help us make sense of the year to come and of what the big themes we might expect and what we might look to see in 2024. Welcome to Tech into the Future.
Any big New Year's resolutions?
No. No resolutions for me.
Quick.
I like, I don't know, I did do a reflective moment and write a little sheet of things that kind of, on a meaningful level, I hope will change and shift this year. But for the most part, I avoid resolutions. I kind of think you should always be gearing up to be a better person, to be a better employee, to be a better everything. And so I try to work on it throughout the year. But I did take a moment and do a little thinking and kind of write, here are a few big things I want to see change in 2024 or I want to get done in 2024. How about you? What are your resolutions?
So similarly, I'm not a resolutions person, but I do have goals for each vertical of my life.
Okay, I like it. Verticals in
Yes,
your
each
life.
vertical of my life.
Okay, what are your verticals? Tell us.
Fair enough. So I have 5, and I know this sounds very weird, but to be honest, you have to dissect your life. At least I have to make meaning of it, right? And to set goals. So I have spiritual, financial, career, personal, and fitness goals.
I like
and
it.
for each one of those verticals, I have goals. And
I
so
like
that's
it.
pretty much how we're attacking the new year.
All right. No. So we've got to get into this year with a lot of energy. It's going to be it's going to be an interesting one. And to get into it, we're going to talk about some of the big themes that we're expecting in 2024. Kicking off of 2023, I think one of the first really big things in the tech world is going to be, will we have more money or less money this year?
And what are the indicators of that?
I think the big thing that's really going to drive it is US interest rates. And that really affects how much money sort of investors feel comfortable putting into more speculative investment buckets. And VC is a generally speculative and risky investment bucket. And VC in Africa is an even more risky and speculative. So last year, we raised about half the amount of capital that we did the year before. All indications are that the U.S. economy is kind of stabilized, and so in the first half of this year, we might see interest rates, hold steady, or perhaps even start to drop. And so maybe I think the expectation so far is that by the second half of the year or so, we might start to see a bit more capital coming on stream. But there also is, and that's basically foreign capital, so coming out of the continent.
So let me interject for a second. So
Please.
For those that might be asking, well, this is a Nigeria show, why are you talking about US interest rates? It's because truly when, the way we say it is when America sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold, specifically us here on the continent as it impacts technology. Around 40% of the venture capital investment in Africa comes from the States, and about 60% of the African startups are incorporated in the US. And so the interest rates in the US definitely impact our growth in the sector because it impacts investments in the sector.
Absolutely. So if they do drop as their economies are stabilized, then it means that there will be more follow-on capital for us here on the continent. But I think another thing that's really important in terms of availability of capital is that there is more local funding coming on stream. There are bigger funds that have been raised by VCs who are actually based on the continent, and we're going to have Andy from Founders Factory, which is one of those,
Yes.
kind of join us today. Founders Factory Africa, join us today. But there's also sort of more long-term capital, sort of from the IFC and AFC and sort of interesting investors who have not really traditionally been very big in the VC space, but are starting to kind of pay attention to it. And I think all of that will affect the availability of capital on the continent this year. So looking forward to seeing how that plays out. I think another really big theme, another area that is of concern in 2023 is going to be
Lack
growth.
of growth, or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof. So economic growth on the continent is a really big area of concern.
Yes, it actually is less than 0.5% based on the projections from Fitch.
Oh wow! So that promises another challenging year for businesses all over the continent, and that's not just in tech, but businesses across board. Because if the economy is not growing, it becomes that much more difficult for you as a business to grow your own business. But like you said, I think in your opener, 2023 did kind of prepare us for this. It was a difficult year. And I think that a lot of startups are coming into 2024 and a lot of technology companies are coming into 2024 very aware of the need to grow their revenue, to grow their FX revenue.
Indeed, yeah.
And that they have to go further afield to do it. So
Yes.
business as usual won't cut it. This is a year in which, as a business, if you are serious about succeeding, you're going to need to make sure that you are finding new customers, you're finding new audience niches, you're finding revenue that is in FX so that the currency devaluations, whether in Nigeria, Kenya, or anywhere else, aren't affecting you quite as much.
And you're focused on efficiencies, right? And sometimes those efficiencies are internal, and sometimes they come as consolidating, right, between other companies that may be struggling. And so I think this would also be an opportunity for mergers and acquisitions in in the industry, as we have already started to see from 2023.
Yeah, so late 2023, we definitely saw those mergers and acquisitions starting, and some really interesting ones, so not just people within the same vertical, not direct competitors, but people looking at, if I acquire those assets, actually I can make myself more efficient in this particular way. And I think it's a sign of a maturing ecosystem that people are starting to think about those. It's also a way to avoid shutting down, a way to avoid letting people go, is to figure out a way to combine what it is you're doing with other people. So I think that we'll see an acceleration of that this year. And like Emeka said on our last episode, we'll see a lot of flavors of mergers. Different kinds of mergers. So stay with us, and we'll be talking about that all through the course of the year. Other big themes.
Policy. Policy will play a role in the shrinking or the expanding of opportunities that exist in this space. It depends on how strongly the policy landscape is and how the engagement between the ecosystem, the private ecosystem, and the regulators are working hand in hand to make sure that they are creating policies, yes, that are protecting the consumers, but are also creating an enabling environment for a lot of our technology services and providers to thrive.
No, I agree with you. I think that's going to be a really big player. And I might expand it and say policy and government action.
And yes, exactly.
And so in Nigeria, I know, there's a big plan. The minister rolled out his play. But I know across not just the minister, but the entire portfolio of tech agencies, there's a big play in 2024 to start to build out a more robust infrastructure level to support the entire tech industry. And I've
Beyond
heard
Nigeria.
Well, so I'm starting within Nigeria. I know that the Nigerian government is thinking, there's this whole stack they've got in India that supports identity and payments. And we've kind of been working on bits and pieces of this for the last decade and beyond. But I think there's a much more concentrated effort in this administration to really build that stack really robustly. I'm going to talk a lot about that over the next few weeks. We're going to bring some people in the government to actually break it down so we can get a bit more clarity on that. But I think that's going to be a big thing. But to bring it to your point, across the rest of the continent, we are seeing a lot of tech moves. I was in Algeria late in 2023, and the government there is making this big push where they're talking about a startup visa that's across countries and allows people working in startups to travel more easily. They're talking about a big global startup, Pan-African startup fund. They're also talking about recognizing the startup acts across countries, and that's a push that they're making with ministers of tech from across the continent. I also know that there's a number of countries, Rwanda, which has been doing this for a long time, DRC, Uganda, Kenya, which are all pushing a much more robust government intervention to make life easy for startups, to make life easy for technology companies, I think we're going to track that over the course of this year and see what kind of progress those countries are making.
I think it stems from the realization and acknowledgement that technology actually is what is probably going to catapult us as a country. I know people
and as a continent.
And as a continent. People hate using the word leapfrogging, but I think it is technology that's going to leapfrog us into...
I don't care whether it leapfrogs us. It's just got to move us forward. It can hop, it can push, it can slide, as long as it takes us forward.
We just need forward movement, indeed.
Excellent. To really dig deeply into the big themes of 2024, we're going to take you to an interview that we had earlier with Andy Obuoforibo of Founders Factory Africa and Babs Ogundeyi of Cuda. Stay with us on Tech into the Future. Hi, welcome back to Tech into the Future. I'm here with Andy Obuoforibo. He is the global head of content as well as the Nigeria country manager for Founders Factory Africa. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks, Tomiwa. Nice to be here.
Excellent. Also with us.
Yes, we're also here with Babs Ogundeyi, who is the group CEO for Cuda, a digital bank. Welcome, Babs.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. I'm going to start with Andy. Can you tell us a little bit about Founders Factory Africa? You guys raised $114 million last year for what I believe is your second fund. And I want you to tell us a little bit about your approach to investing in Africa, a little bit about your portfolio, a little bit about your approach.
Yeah. At FFA, we are the most hands-on early-stage investor in Africa. We believe that early-stage startups in Africa need more than just capital.
Okay.
They need help in building the best product. They need help in recruiting and keeping the best teams. They need help with securing the right partnerships, and they need help finding and securing that first cohort of ultra-loyal customers that take them to the next level. And we try and provide all of that. So after we write a check, they come into our program, and they are supported by our elite studio team. We're distributed across Africa. We're in Johannesburg, Nairobi, here in Lagos, and we provide them product support, growth, partnerships, recruiting, talent acquisition, you name it, we do it all for them in that initial first period. Now, our approach...
What size of checks do you write?
It's a good question. Yes, our checks range, it just depends, numerous factors, but ballpark between $100,000 and $250,000.
Okay, all right, cool. And so in that first approach, you were going to say, I know you guys have about 60, or invested in about 60 startups across 12 countries.
Yep.
What's the focus? What kind of startups? What kind of things should people be building for FFA to be interested in them?
Let's build something nice. No,
I don't think nice gets the checks. I've spoken to investors before. What kind of startups do you invest in?
So we're sector agnostic. We used to be focused on fintech, agtech, and health tech.
So there's tech people around on this table. What does sector agnostic mean for those in the audience who are not?
It means we are not restricted to specific types of businesses, like say...
It doesn't all have to be fintech. It doesn't all have to be agri. Okay,
yes.
All right.
It's a tech business, tech-enabled business, and we believe that business can ultimately give a great return to our institutional investors, then we will invest in it. And, but what we try to do is... We're not anywhere belly-faced at the same time. What we try to do is...
Good to know.
Country by country, sector by sector, we look at what we believe are key problems where there's a massive opportunity, where we understand the customer base, we understand that market. We have a great sourcing team and venture design team, and they are some of the best analysts in the world. And we just basically build a point of view about each market, each sector, each problem. And then we now look for startups who are already operating in those markets trying to solve that problem. And we figure out what do they need to get better, and then we invest.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. You guys also have an interesting perspective on gender imbalance. Can you tell us how the fund approaches this?
Well, simply put, we believe that if there were no institutional blockers, if there were no unconscious biases, we would probably be seeing 50-50 in terms of gender balance among founders, among tech founders. I mean, if you look at micro SMEs, for example, here in Nigeria, 2/3 of micro SMEs are owned by women. So obviously women are great business people. But how come we don't see that at when it comes to tech startups? It's simply because there are some institutional things and cultural things that get in the way of women getting into the business of founding tech startups, that get in the way of them getting that first check and moving on. And so what we try to do, we try to use our influence, our power, and our resources in the industry to overcome some of those challenges. So for example, if women are struggling to get a first check, then we go out of our way to make sure that in our investment, because we also invest in idea stage people who have not built anything yet.
Right.
We go out of our way to make sure we are not overlooking women with great business ideas who are not getting a fair look elsewhere. So that's one example. Another example is we've all know that some of the best founders are past operators, for instance. And so we're thinking about how many women who are currently working in a startup are not thinking about starting a startup, even though they have the exact skills needed.
Right.
And so we're very big on ecosystem engagement. When we are helping our startups hire, we are helping them think clearly and intentionally about gender balance and diversity in their hiring, because we know that we are grooming the next cohort of tech founders, whether men or women. And then we are, like I said, we are very focused on engaging with the ecosystem, engaging with operators, and in those engagements, identifying those who are already thinking about maybe starting a business, but they don't know if they have those skills. I would say, hey, look, come to FFA, we'll give you the support to get going. So these are the hands-on things we do. And of course, gender equality, gender representation is part of our KPIs internally. So we're not just talking the talk, we're walking.
Fantastic. I was going to ask you that. So what you hope to see in your investors, you guys are doing as well.
Yes.
Fantastic. Moving on to you, sir. Tell us, when I introduced you as the group CEO of a digital bank, Cuda. But tell us, for the benefit of our audience that may not know what that is, what exactly is Cuda?
Yeah, so we're a digital bank, as you said, and what that means is we provide financial services to customers, both individuals and businesses. And the idea is you should have access to this financial services from anywhere you are. So we provide convenience, we provide accessibility, and in our case, we provide affordability. I would say Kuda pretty much pioneered what a digital bank is today in Nigeria, in terms of how it operates, how you interact with customers. And today you can literally be in your living room, open a bank account within 5 minutes, and you can do everything you need to do. Your card will be sent to you once you order it. If you have an issue with whatever the issue is, you can chat with a customer service agent. Everything can be done from wherever you are.
From the convenience of my room. I love it.
Absolutely.
So then tell me, just again for our audience, can you break down further when you say financial services?
Yeah, so financial services is quite broad. The basic level is having the ability to actually own a bank account, and then you can receive money either from friends and family or from a business that you're doing. So that's the very basic level, and we go further in terms of just looking to try to educate our consumers in terms of how to save, how to get access to credit, maybe to enhance your business. I'll give an example of the savings. For example, we have a product called Spend and Save. So some people really struggle to save, but what is paramount is everybody will spend.
Yeah.
So if you attach saving to spending, so basically you just set a percentage, it could be 5%, 10%, whatever you spend at any point in time, it would automatically save that percentage for you.
Oh, I love it.
So it's like an easy way to get people. It's actually one of our most popular
So the
products.
more you spend, the more you save.
Exactly.
Fantastic. I should have one of those.
Absolutely.
Okay, so enough background. The point of this episode is to talk about 2024, the year to come. And so I want a bit of a sense from both of you, as investor, as operator, how you're looking at Nigeria, how you're looking at Africa, how you're looking at sort of tech from a global perspective in this year to come. So big themes, and Andy, I'm going to start with you. When you look at the world of tech in 2024, what are the big themes? What are the areas where you are excited, where you're worried? Let's go.
2024, we hope, will be an improvement on 2023 in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think what we're seeing is after the shocks of earlier last year, I think we're seeing sort of a return to, I wouldn't say optimism so much as readiness to continue what was being built previously. So many investors who left are sort of trying to dip their toes back in the water. So that's at that macro level. And I think also the startups that survived last year, and there are lots of them and they're doing great. I think a lot of them are coming into 2024 with an understanding of what the core problems they should be solving operationally are, what the issues around commercials, unit economics are that they need to really be addressing early on to survive another situation like 2023. And so it's interesting to see startups taking more of an interest in, basically the unit economics of things, and also applying tech to operations. So a lot of time before 2023, you often saw the situation where you have lots of tech-enabled businesses, and these tech-enabled businesses are saying, okay, you know what, we have a tech-facing product, a consumer-facing tech product, but internally, the operations are still very, 20th century. But increasingly, with the crunch of last year and the need to save your margins and get some efficiencies, a lot of startups started doing something really different, which is let's apply tech to how we do things internally, and let's see if that allows us to save some money here. Maximize the potential of our staff so staff can do more with the same amount of time. And as investors, we're seeing that that's having a positive outcome on margins.
Interesting. So just for the audience, just before Ngozi goes back to Babs, if you missed the first episode of this show, and also if you haven't been following, last year Africa raised about 3.2 billion in venture capital versus 6.5 billion the year before. So it's a big dip. And a lot of these companies were funded on the basis that they will still do a second round, a third round of funding before they get to profitability. And then the music stopped. The money stopped flowing so robustly. And so a lot of people did not make it into 2024. So we give thanks that there are a large number that did, but it's a very different ecosystem.
It is, in fact, you led up to my question, and we didn't plan that one. Yeah. But my question for you, Babs, is, as you stated, you're one of the pioneer startups in the ecosystem, and my question is, you've really seen the change in the market, right, from when you started to last year and anticipating 2024. What would you say has been the impact to the way you do business, Cuda specifically, given the change in the market? And then what do you think would then continue to be some of the lessons you learned in 2023, being that the market indices says that things are going to remain the same for a while? How then do you plan to carry that on into 2024?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll say is for us at Cuda, and my own personal belief as well, I don't think necessarily fundraising is sort of a business model.
Yes.
I think it helps.
Yeah.
So generally the way I think about these things is, if it's available, it's great. If it's not available, you still have a business to run.
Right.
So I kind of separate the two. And the reality is access to capital typically is supposed to give an advantage over others. Competition, you go faster and whatnot. If nobody has the access,
right,
then nobody has that advantage.
Yeah.
But you still have to, the real advantage is the business,
yeah,
the innovation of the business, the ability to serve customers who are the true, I would say, providers of capital for a business.
Right.
So I think about it very differently. So for me, it was more a case of, just business as normal. Of course, we had to shift focus a little bit from aggressive growth,
right,
because capital enables you to do that.
Right.
And we just kind of refocused more on, I suppose, some of the things Andy was talking about, which is like operational aspects of the business, doing more automations,
right,
in terms of our processes. That's a lot of things that we did in 2023 was that. Just having more stability with the existing products, taking the opportunity to really reorientate our team in terms of what we're trying to do. Because 2020, 2021, 2022 was all about growth. At some point you have to kind of step back and refocus. And for us, we're able to do that. We had achieved critical mass. I think as of last year, we had maybe 4.5 million customers. As of today, we have over 7 million customers. So growth is still happening.
Across what markets?
I would say 90% of our customer base are in Nigeria. We launched in the UK in November 22, I believe it was. And we're working on other markets as well. We have licenses in some African countries and also non-African countries.
Okay, we're going to come to that.
we will be dipping our toes in some other countries, but our focus is still Nigeria. It's very much Nigeria. We want to be category kings in Nigeria. We want to maintain our strong position in Nigeria. And again, if there is opportunity, if there's access to more capital, eventually in the future, then we can be aggressive in other markets as well.
Thank you for staying with us at Tech Into the Future. Andy, last year you guys, FFA, raised $114 million, even in the drought, even in the tough economic situation. My question to you is, what propels that? What is feeding that? What's the word? There's clearly some level of optimism. What's feeding that optimism? Exactly. What's feeding that?
Oh, yeah. At FFA, we're optimistic about Africa. We believe in the African market because I think we understand the African market. I think we pride ourselves in being, as an investor, the most knowledgeable investor about the early stage African ecosystem. And that's why we're optimistic where maybe others are less so. And that's why we've raised this $114 million. And we didn't just raise it, we've already started deploying it. We've already cut our first few checks, and we're going to be cutting some more very soon.
Fantastic.
And why we are optimistic is that we have seen that what happened last year was not an African problem.
Okay.
It was a global funding problem. And when the bubble bursts, investors will generally pull away from markets that they are least familiar with. This is the market we're the most familiar with, so we're staying, and we understand what we need to do. There are key opportunities that we see. Like I said earlier, right, and as Babs also agreed, there is a need for lots of businesses right away to start thinking about unit economics, thinking about profitability, trying to push revenue. Fundraising isn't for everyone and is not for everything, but there is definitely a strong case for VC-backed, VC-funded businesses that are not profitable and won't be profitable anytime soon. Now, let me give you just a trivial example. We have so many agri-tech businesses across the continent, right? Now, and same with health tech, but I'll use agri-tech as an example. Why is agri-tech difficult? Let me not say most, but many models in agri-tech come down to a simple thing, which is you have thousands of farmers spread out across a country, and you are collecting crops from all of those farmers and transporting them and getting them somewhere else. Or you are taking inputs like seeds and fertilizers and sharing them out to all those farmers. There's a lot of transportation happening there. Now, if all those 1,000 farmers were all in Lekki, that wouldn't be a problem. But they're spread out, one per village, for example. And that means that one truck is only carrying one load. And that's never going to be efficient, right? So that business will never be profitable until it has maybe 20,000 farmers. So if that business is focused only on profits and rejects VC funding, it will die. And that's why so many of these our sectors really haven't grown yet. So basically, VC funding is the lifeline to get that business the 1 year, 2 years, 3 years it needs to acquire the enough customers for the network effect for it to be profitable. And what we have done at FFA is we look at the map and we know where those broken markets are.
Interesting.
And what we are trying to do is find startups trying to fix those broken markets and who have the grit and the resolve to go out there, village by village, market by market, to solve that problem.
I really love that. I was actually just going to ask you what your thesis for venture funding in Africa was, and you've essentially laid it out. It's really...
Yeah, and that's a good call out for specific models where scale is the opportunity you get through scaling that is the value proposition.
That's right.
And so in those markets, you can't do what we do when we have the VC winters, right, which is focus on profitability. You still have to keep growing, actually. So ironically, you have to pump more money into those so they can continue to grow at a faster pace so that they can then reach their point of value proposition, right? When it's optimal for them to scale and then bring the returns in. Fair enough.
That's exactly right. And ironically, those businesses that can't scale right away, or rather rely on scaling before they can be profitable, tend to be the rails that an ecosystem needs. So you have a business that's really relatively low margin, but they've hacked, transporting goods to and from farmers in various locations. Suddenly somebody else, maybe providing financial services to farmers, can piggyback on that other business. There's a partnership there, and you have taken away a core investment that other second business would have needed to make. So if the African ecosystem is going to grow the way we are hopeful it will grow, and we were confident it will grow, then we, people like us at FFA, have to be the ones ready to invest in these businesses that need a bit longer runway before they can be profitable.
I love it. I really like the solving broken markets thesis. It's a really critical one. And it's also an explanation for people who wonder why do VC-funded businesses need so many rounds of funding? Why can't you just buy the bag of rice for 5 naira and sell it for 7 naira and be profitable in year one? But it's much more difficult to do that when you're solving fundamental issues. Babs, I want your big themes for 2024, because we said this episode we're going to talk about what's coming. So when you're looking at the year to come, we're past the growth at all costs phase. What are the big themes you see for this year?
I think first is just the mindset. There's definitely a realization from operators that there's a change in sentiment. It doesn't mean there's not going to be any funding, but it just means the approach is different. So we're going to hear a lot about profitability, sustainability, and I think there will be also probably fewer companies, hopefully due to mergers and acquisitions, and not shutting down. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. Running a business or starting a business is not just a business. There's also a sentimental attachment to it. So I think sometimes it blurs the operator's minds in what's best. A merger is best, but when it's backs against the wall, you tend to see a bit clearer. So I think we will see more mergers, definitely more acquisitions. Those that have been fortunate enough to either raise large enough amounts or have gotten to sort of significant revenue generation are in a strong position to do those acquisitions. So, and I think there are a few like that. So I think that,
see those.
yeah, I think that will happen. There's going to be also, I think it's going to be a big year for AI, not in terms of just the buzzword, but in terms of the use case.
What kind of use cases? What are we talking about?
I mean, even from things like customer service, I think that's going to be a big one.
So AI to solve day-to-day business problems and speed up processes. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you want to serve. It's easy to serve more affluent customers because the cost base makes sense. So when you're talking about unit economics, how do you give the same quality to somebody that is not as affluent and probably maybe even slightly more demanding, needs a lot more hand-holding, a lot more help. For a business, of course you want to do it, but it might not be cost efficient to do that. So I think the use of AI would help. That's just for me, an obvious example, an obvious area that we will see the use of AI. I think also Africa is still predominantly fintech driven in terms of technology business. I mean, there are others that are coming up, but if you look at it, majority is still fintech. And it's not because fintech is cool or whatnot, it's because fintech is actually very difficult. It's because everything still evolves around money and payments and the ease of doing business, ease of collection, so we'll see.
Those are still rails.
Yeah, exactly, yes. So for example, in Nigeria, the regulator is now more open to crypto I can talk about that now. In the previous administration, it was a difficult thing to talk about, but I think it's important. Again, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a big thing this year because innovation it's going to. The openness of the regulator is going to open up more innovation, and you can really go at it openly and come up.
You heard it from Babs. Crypto boys are back. Andy, do you have any sort of like sectors you think are going to be hot this year, or you see like you're expecting to see a lot of growth in?
Well, I think generally logistics is still one of those sectors that it's one of those sectors that on the one hand gets a lot of attention, and on the other hand generates a lot of fear. But I think
for good reasons. It's a hard sector.
For very good reasons, right? But ultimately, I think there's a lot of interesting things happening, not just in Nigeria, but across the continent in logistics, whether it's last mile or whether it's even, cross-border logistics. There's a lot happening, and I think I'm going to see more of that. And things, especially with the Continental Free Trade Agreement, we're starting to see more and more, a bit of an uptick in intra-African trade, and I think it is going to come along with an increased demand for logistics, and we're already seeing that in the ecosystem. I agree with Babs about AI. We're already seeing it. We've made quite a few AI investments ourselves recently.
Really?
Yes, and I think what we also see with AI is AI does two things that are really useful for Africa. One, because we have low margins, AI is great because AI basically multiplies the number of people a single person can serve. Whoever that person is, right? And so that's one area. Another area is digital comfort. So oftentimes you see, and many businesses in Africa face this, many startups, the moving your customers from WhatsApp to your app is always a major challenge, across board. People are just comfortable using WhatsApp, for example. And so when you now incorporate chatbots, for example, that suddenly gives you a new layer of interface. In fact, we might be seeing 2024 may be the year that the next thing after the app becomes important in Africa. And that thing will be built on AI, creating new types of interfaces for people who are not digital natives as we currently understand them.
Fantastic. Babs, what's exciting for you? What are you scared of? What are you excited about for the rest of 2024? And you can speak to Cuda specifically or broadly.
Yeah. So for Cuda specifically, there are a few sort of products that we're excited about. We want to be very product focused. We're also getting a lot closer with our regulator. We're probably going to look at sort of a variation of the existing license that we have, which would enable us to do the kind of products that we want to put out. So for this year, we're focusing on credit. I think it's a good time to be in the credit space. We have, there's difficulty in accessing capital, but at the same time, there are still great opportunities for the right candidates, right businesses. So I think it's a really good time to have
businesses, not individuals?
And individuals as well. But for individuals, we're focusing this year on earners, salary earners, because obviously repayment has to come from somewhere. So credit, and then we're really expanding our business banking offering, because again, I think what we found is even a lot of our retail customers are also businesses. It's just that they haven't mastered that art, and they don't necessarily understand the importance of actually creating and making it a business. So part of what Cuda is looking to do is not just offer business banking, but offer education on how to really be a business. So that's pretty exciting for us. And I think our wild card is probably something in crypto, in multi-currency, but we'll see how that goes. It's pretty new. The announcement is new. There's still a lot to kind of unbundle, but I'm sure as the months go on, lots will emerge, and we'll be able to define our strategy for that specific product.
Call me, Labs. I want an exclusive.
Before we close up, I just want to take from Andy real quick, what excites you and what worries you about 2024 very quickly?
What excites me is new ways to help startups. I think we're seeing more investors, not just FFA, but other investors thinking about different ways to support startups. We at FFA, for example, we are starting, we started in 2023, but we'll be in earnest this year. We're not only offering, capital for equity, we're offering also, grants, loans, things of that nature, because the financial needs of a startup differ.
Yes.
And so if we're going to succeed in Africa, we have to become not just innovative about the startups, but innovative about funding startups.
Indeed.
And I think we're going to see a lot more of that in this year, and I'm excited about that. I think I'm just worried. I wouldn't say worried, but of course concerned. Of course, we still are going to see some startups struggling. We will still, and so there's a lot of job insecurity for people in the sector. I think that's the one thing generally on a human level that I worry about.
So Babs, talking about AI, is there currently a way to use AI to track delinquent debtors?
Yes, so I think that's a very interesting concept. I'm not aware that in Nigeria that is currently happening,
Right.
specifically using AI. We do use, at Cuda, we do use various data points to understand who will probably repay and who may not repay.
Yeah.
And that's how we price the risk, and the risk being the loan.
Right.
However, I think it is interesting to think about how AI, artificial intelligence, can not just help to underwrite and determine that factor of who's likely to pay or not, but actually to help us to go after, people that have actually decided not to repay. I would say I haven't looked into it in that detail, but it's definitely something that is worth exploring, and yeah.
Maybe we'll bring you back for a loan issue, because we're going to talk about loans,
Yes, we
and
do.
that's a very, very interesting space. But we're coming to the end of this. It's been a really fascinating conversation, but again, as we go into 2024, what's the good, the bad, and the ugly? As we're thinking about this year, it's a segment that we're going to close out this show with very frequently. Just what's the good, the bad, and the ugly of things? So what's the good? Ngozi, do you have, what's for you?
Okay, so for me, the good is that we've been here before, right? 2023 took us by shock. Nobody was prepared for it. But all the things that we experienced in 2023, we are apparently going to keep experiencing in 2024. And so I think that's a good thing, because yes, at least now we brace ourselves, and we've already talked about some of the things that the market is taking into consideration, right? In how they do things differently, because 2023 has already signaled that we should start thinking about how we do things differently. So I think that's the good news here.
Yep.
Any good?
Yeah, it's lots of good. I think the startups that survived 2023 have come into 2024 with an understanding of what they need to do.
Yep.
Better efficiencies, like we talked about, operational efficiencies, more of a focus on commercials, on unit economics, on the road to profitability, even if you're not there yet. And I think on the investor side, some investors are coming into 2024 with maybe new insights about the market. And so you will see better investments, better bets from investors. I think you'll see more flexibility from investors about how they invest, on what terms, what type of capital. So I think generally the hardship of 2023 is leading to a lot of innovation for 2024.
Fantastic. Babs, you want to go more good or bad?
Yeah, look, I agree with the good. They would definitely have more resilient companies, just from the experience of prior year. The bad, I think there may be more layoffs. But again, I'm not even sure if that's such a bad, because it's kind of part and parcel of the industry that we're in. The bad, the ugly, I think if we're not careful, and I don't want to see this, we might have some founders or operators get in trouble, like criminal trouble,
Yeah.
So,
Fair enough.
But that could be an ugly, but which we don't want to see.
Yeah.
Interesting ugly too.
I mean, I think, look, let's be real about it. So on the bad, the economy remains tough. I think most African countries are still going to have a pretty rough 2024. Funding, we hope it comes back, but I think for the first half of this year, it's going to remain relatively thin. I agree with you on your ugly. We're still going to see some of the fraud. We're still going to see sort of founders mismanaging. And I think the way we described it last time was it's the Warren Buffett growth. You know, once the tide is out, we see who's swimming naked. And so unfortunately, when times get tough, then you can see people who've been cutting corners. You can see, and I think we'll still see some of that. I think for me, the real ugly is the fact that the pain isn't over. You know, like it's still going to be a tough year. There will likely still be shutdowns this year. There will likely still be layoffs, and that's very, very painful. But Babs is right. It is a reality of one, venture-funded businesses. It is a reality of new sectors, and this is still a relatively new and growing sector for the continent. And so you're going to have the failures you're going to have and the impact that comes with those. But again, let's finish it on the good, and let's finish it on the note of the good. We're hardened. We're better prepared for the year to come. We've done this before. Let's do it again and do it better. To bring the quote and the mantra from Twitter, we no go gree.
Yeah, we no go gree for
2024. Now, my team at Big Cabal said, you know, for this year, whatever the problems that come, we're bigger than them. So
Indeed.
let's take the year from that note. But thanks so much for joining us, guys. It's been fantastic to talk with you.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Tech into the Future. I hope that you found today's conversations informative and useful for you as you plan for 2024. Remember, our motto for 2023 is, we no go gree. Whatever problems come, you are bigger than them. We look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of Tech into the Future. Take care, people.